Number 26 asks us to solve for x and y. So taking a look at these two triangles, the first one that I'm going to want to solve for is y because I've got more information. I've got two pieces of information there for y. Here's one of my y terms and here's one of my y terms. And let's look at the triangle here and notice that I have these two that are congruent to each other. Therefore, we have an isosceles triangle. And in an isosceles triangle, they have two equal sides. They also have two equal base angles. So what we're going to do is set the two base angles equal to each other and solve for x. So we can say 7y minus 3 is equal to 3y plus 13. And subtract 3y to both sides. So 4y minus 3 is equal to 13. Add 3 to both sides. 4y is equal to 16. Divide both sides by 4, and y will give you 4. 16 divided by 4. Okay, so we have our y figured out. But in order to find out the measure of this angle right here, we have to plug in some information because we don't have enough with just the information given. So we're going to plug this 4 back into one of these. It doesn't matter which one because they're isosceles and they're going to be the same no matter what. So let's just plug it into the 3y one. So we can say 3 times 4 plus 13. 12 plus 13 is going to give you 25. So the measure of angle, this angle right here is 25, and this is 25. So we're going to work our way backwards and find this angle, which is going to be the same as this angle because they're vertical angles. So if these two angles add up to 25 plus 25 gives you 50, then the remainder has to be 130. And if this is 130, that this has to be 130. And then I know that these two base angles are going to be the same because of these two marks making it an isosceles triangle. So I can say 180 minus 130, which I know is 50. I've got 50 degrees left of this triangle, and they have to be split up equally into two to make those two base angles. So I know that that's 25 degrees. And that's 25 degrees. But it didn't ask for the measure of the angle, it asked us to find x. So I know that 2x plus 3 equals 25, so I'm going to put that in an equation. 2x plus 3 equals 25. Subtract 3 to both sides. Divide both sides by 2. And x is equal to 11. So x is equal to 11, and y is equal to 4. All right, 27 also asks us to solve for x and y. And taking a look at these two triangles, I'm going to start with this triangle right here because I have more information to work with. And notice that I have two congruent lines right here making this green triangle an isosceles triangle. And if they have two equal legs, then they have two equal base angles right here as well. So what I can do is set those two pieces of information equal to each other. So I can say that 4x minus 10 equals 2x plus 12, and I can start subtracting 2x, and that leaves me with 2x minus 10 is equal to 12. Add 10 to both sides. 2x is equal to 22, divide both sides by 2, and x is equal to 11. All right, so we solved for one of them. And now what we can do is plug that 11 back into one of these equations. So 4 times 11 minus 10 gives us 44 minus 10, which gives us 34. So I know that this angle is 34, and this angle is 34. And notice that these two angles right here, they form a line. So if I can find the measure of this angle and subtract it from 180, it'll give me the measure of this angle. So if that's 34 degrees and this is 34 degrees, those add up to give us 68 degrees. And if I subtract that from 180, that gives us 112. So I know that this part right here is 112. Next, I can do 180 minus 12 to determine the measure of this angle right here. So I know the measure of this angle is 68. And notice that I have congruent lines here, making this triangle also an isosceles triangle. So if the measure of that base angle is 68, then the measure of this base angle has to also be 68. So I could add those two up and then subtract from 180 in order to find the angle measure for here. So 68 plus 68 gives us 136, and I'm going to subtract 180 from that, and I get 44. So I know that this angle right here has to be 44 degrees, but it wants to know what y is. So 4y equals 44, so I can set that up algebraically. Divide both sides by 4, and y is 11. So both x and y are 11. Okay, so for number 28, we still need to solve for x and y, and let's take a look at this triangle right here, and notice this box, which indicates that that's a right triangle, meaning this is 90 degrees. I also see these two marks indicating that this triangle is an isosceles triangle, so I know that the two base angles are going to be the same, and I know that they are going to be the leftover after 90. So 180 minus 90 gives us 90 degrees left over, and when I divide that by 2, I know that each of these angles are going to be 45 degrees. So in order to find y, I can say 3y is equal to 45 and divide both sides by 3, and y is 15. So there's one of my answers. And another triangle that I have here, I have this big triangle. And notice that I have double congruent marks here, so I know that it is also an isosceles triangle, and it told us that our vertex angle up here was 50. So therefore, this whole entire angle has to be 180 minus 50, which gives us 130. And then I have to divide that by 2, which means that this whole entire angle is going to be 65 degrees. And I already know that 45 of it is taken up by this triangle. So if I do 65 minus 45, that gives me 20. So the angle measure is 20, and I need to set it equal to 2x, because 2x equals 20. So 2x equals 20, divide both sides by 2, and x is 10.